It's Tuesday, May 15. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. The Independent Commission of Investigations, INDICOM, is seeking to have one of the judges who heard a constitutional motion brought against it by the Jamaica Defense Force recuse herself from writing the judgment in the case. INDICOM says it has taken action on the basis that the judge is married to a lawyer representing the JDF in a similar matter. The application is to be heard on Thursday in the Supreme Court. According to RDR News, Justice Carol Lawrence Beswick is one of 3 judges who, more than 2 years ago, heard the case in which the JDF is seeking to stop INDICOM's investigation of the use of mortars during the May 2010 West Kingston security operations. The judgment is pending. Her husband, Paul Beswick, last month represented the JDF in the Keith Clark case in which 3 soldiers are accused of murder. In both cases, the issue of immunity has been raised based on certificates signed by the National Security Minister. As the investigation into the improper disposal of bodies of 2 babies at the Kingston Public Hospital intensifies, the parliamentary opposition is objecting to a director of the Southeast Regional Health Authority, SARA, Dr. Patrice Charles Freeman, leading the probe. In a statement Monday afternoon, Dr. Dayton Campbell, opposition spokesman on health, described the decision as highly inappropriate, charging that Dr. Charles Freeman also sits as a director on the board of the Kingston Public Hospital, where the incident took place. Dr. Campbell argued that it would be tantamount to investigating herself. He added, quote, "We think that there needs to be an independent body or individual that is charged with doing the investigation," end quote. Sarah on Saturday ordered an immediate investigation into the circumstances on which the 2 bodies of neonates that were being stored in the KPH morgue were improperly disposed of on Friday. Motorists are one step closer to paying heftier fines for breaches of the road code following the Senate's approval of a bill intended to amend the Road Traffic Act. There were 161 amendments, and now the bill will head back to the House of Representatives for approval for the changes which were made in the Senate last week. The draft legislation will require the signature of the Governor-General, Sir Patrick Allen, before being enshrined into law. The act was passed in the Senate after Government Senate leader Kamina Johnson-Smith recommended a reduction in the fine for people who are pulled over by the police but do not have their license in their possession.
So the compromise that we are proposing is to reduce the fine to the originally proposed $2,000. So the requirement is to carry your license. As it is now, when you receive your license says on it that it must be carried when operating a motor vehicle or applying for renewal. This is not a new concept.
Also, the opposition senator's recommendation of a grace period of a day or 2 to be given for people who produce the evidence they are licensed to drive was not accepted. Entertainer Capleton was granted bail yesterday when he appeared in the Corporate Area Criminal Court on rape charges. He was granted bail in the sum of $250,000. As a condition of his bail, he was ordered not to make contact with the complainant and be fingerprinted. The 51-year-old artist, whose given name is Clifton Bailey, has been accused of forcibly having sexual intercourse with a hairdresser he hired to groom his hair at a hotel in New Kingston in April. In regional news, more than 1 million potential visitors chose not to visit the Caribbean last year after Hurricanes Irma and Maria hit, costing over $700 million. This data has been highlighted in a report in the London-based World Travel and Tourism Council. The industry study released Monday said the hurricane season resulted in an estimated loss in 2017 of 826,100 visitors to the Caribbean, compared to pre-hurricane forecasts. Caribbean island destinations rely heavily on tourism, which provides 15.2% of the region's gross domestic product and sustains 14% of its labor force. Worldwide, the average contribution of tourism to GDP is 10.4%. In 2017, Irma and Maria left a trail of destruction in Barbuda, St. Martin, St. Bart's, Anguilla, Cuba, Dominica, and U.S. territories of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Barbuda, Dominica, and Puerto Rico were among the worst hit and are still recovering, but the loss of tourism in the Caribbean was also affected, and it affected islands that were not hit directly by the hurricanes. Still, the group warns recovery of the tourism sector to pre-hurricane levels could take 4 years. The Trinidad-based Caribbean Court of Justice has ruled that St. Lucian-born academic Eddie Van Toos is legal to vote in the upcoming Barbados elections. In a ruling handed down Sunday, the CCJ ruled that Professor Van Toos had successfully satisfied the necessary legal and regulatory conditions to vote in the May 24 general elections and should be registered as an elector post-haste. CCJ President Dennis Byron delivered the ruling of the 5-member panel.
The court is satisfied that on the basis of judicial findings pronounced in this matter, which have not been appealed, the appellant has satisfied the necessary legal and regulatory conditions for registration as an elector. Mrs. Angela Taylor, the Chief Electoral Officer, shall register or cause the appellant to be registered as an elector before 12 noon on Monday, the 14th day of May, 2018. And if you, the within named Angela Taylor, Chief Electoral Officer, do not comply with this order, you may be held to be in contempt of court, and you may be imprisoned and or fined.
In response, Professor Van Toos declined to comment on the written reasons for the CCJ's ruling, which will be released later this week.
I don't want to preempt the written reasons to be provided by the CCJ later this week. However, the decision of the CCJ on Sunday confirms our long-held view that persons who qualify under Section 7 of the Representation of the People Act, Cap 12 of the Laws of Barbados, are entitled as of right to be registered as electors in Barbados. I would like to thank my excellent legal team, comprising Elliot B. Morty, Queen's Counsel, Leslie Haynes, Queen's Counsel, and Faith Minister for the consistent efforts that have paid off.
Still on news from Trinidad, the Movement for Social Justice, the MSJ, is calling on Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley to meet with the Venezuelan government to discuss the influx of immigrants from that country. MSJ leader David Abdullah wants the matter addressed.
As debate continues on how to treat with the increasing influx of Venezuelan immigrants, MSJ leader David Abdullah is calling on government to go directly to the source.
We are calling on the government of Trinidad and Tobago to have a high-level meeting with the government of Venezuela to discuss the issue of immigration, whether legal or illegal, into Trinidad and Tobago, and also to address the issues of mutual security.
Abdullah says what we have in Trinidad is a migrant worker problem and not a refugee problem. Jacobo Torres de Leon, international coordinator of the CBST Union in Venezuela, agreed with Abdullah and praised government's recent expatriation initiative.
Sino que fueron devueltos a donde nunca debieron haber salido. They were not expelled from Trinidad, but they were returned to a country from which they should not have left.
Abdullah says both governments and the unions must develop clear migrant worker policies, as what is taking place currently is modern-day slavery and human trafficking.
And we have to ask the question to Living Waters and all of them who are crying tears about the conditions of Venezuelans, whether or not they are facilitating workers coming into Trinidad and Tobago, migrant workers, and then being sent to employers who are exploiting them terribly.
In sports, we kick off with football as the contractual impasse over head coach Theodore Whitmore has blown over. He will be taking charge of the senior national football team with a new 4-year contract. Pen was put to paper yesterday at the offices of the Jamaica Football Federation. Whitmore, a former Reggae Boys midfielder star, has been at loggerheads with the JFF for some time over his remuneration package and had tendered his resignation early last month before Sports Minister Olivia Babsy-Grange's intervention led to a verbal agreement between both parties. However, the actual document was not signed until yesterday after a meeting between Whitmore, JFF President Michael Ricketts, and other members of the Federation's hierarchy. Ricketts was thrilled that Whitmore would be continuing with the program, while pointing to the short-term plans for the national setup. In his 16 games in charge of the boys since taking over in 2016, Whitmore has led them to a record of 7 wins, 5 losses and 4 draws, with the team scoring 20 goals while conceding 18 with 5 clean sheets. And that's the news. Do stay with us. The weather report is next. This is PBCJ's weather report. Thanks so much for staying with us. Let's start, as usual, with our local currents. In Kingston this afternoon, we're seeing some cloudy conditions forecast. We're also seeing warm temperatures between 25 and 29 degrees Celsius. We're seeing that we could be getting some rainfall this evening as the sun sets at 6:33 p.m. Over there in Montego Bay, St. James, we could be getting some scattered showers across areas. Today, we're also expecting temperatures between 22 and 29 degrees Celsius. And after the rainfall, you can expect the temperature to go down to a cool 10 degrees Celsius this evening as the sun sets at 6:33 p.m. Let's take a look at the forecasts in the other parishes across the island for today. Temperatures between 29 and 32 degrees forecast. We're also seeing scattered showers forecast for most parishes in the northern end of the island. We're expecting cloudy conditions in Maypen and over there in St. Thomas. Tomorrow, we can expect warm temperatures between 29 and 32 degrees Celsius, so it's going to be pretty warm out. We're seeing a forecast of possible showers for Kingston and over there in Portland. Cloudy conditions forecast for most parishes. In our Caribbean forecast, temperatures between 28 and 27 degrees Celsius. We're also seeing rainfall forecast across the region in the eastern and western end. So we're seeing that we could be affected by a weather condition moving across the region tomorrow. We're also seeing sunny skies forecast for Mexico. And in our travel planner, we're looking at the United States, cloudy conditions and rainfall expected in Miami, New York, and Atlanta. Sunny skies forecast for Los Angeles tomorrow. We're looking at the temperatures on your screen, a minimum of 14 degrees Celsius with a high 32 degrees Celsius for these areas. And that's it for the weather report. Thanks so much for making it PBCJ. Remember, we are the People's Station.